afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am proud to present today Paul O'Neill. He's a senior in forest operations and business. When he was younger, he knew he wanted to do something with the environment when he visited the redwood forest in California. He loved it so much there that he actually wants to make sure he centers his career there so that he can be around those trees more. Today he will be talking about silviculture, so please give a warm welcome to Paul O'Neill.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here for me to talk about silviculture and forestry. So most people think about forestry, they either think of one or two extremes. The first one is the complete decimation of a forest, or the other one is the complete tree logging of a forest. But there's different facets to it. Forestry falls into many different categories. And one can be the facilitation of logging, and the other one can be the preservation of forests. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is something in between. But before I begin with that, can anyone tell me what forestry ecology is? Well, it's right up there. That's the textbook definition of it. It's a scientific study of their interrelated patterns, processes, flora, fauna, and ecosystems in a forest. But what does that basically mean? It's how various plants grow and how they interact with each other and even the animals around them. But now that I have that talked about, I can talk to you about silviculture. Does anybody want to take a guess at what silviculture is? Once again, it's at the top. The practice of controlling the establishment, growth, composition, health, and quality of forests to meet diverse needs and values. Once again, that basically just means manipulating what grows in a specific area to meet a desired result for a specific landowner. And the meaning is actually right in the name. Civi means forest, and culture just means to grow. So it's pretty simple when you break it down. And another way to look at it is silviculture is the melding between economics, ecology, and society. And in terms of economics, nothing really gets done in this world unless you can make a profit off of it. Many people use silviculture so that their stands can remain profitable because different wood types have different values, stuff like that. Then you also have to think at a societal level. Some people don't like the way clear cuts look. Even if it's needed to give it the result they want, you have to work around it because it's just not pleasant to the eye. It's not pleasant for land values, stuff like that. So you have to keep that in mind when looking at it. And once again, ecology is in there with it. Okay, the first basic facet of silviculture is regeneration. And regeneration has been happening for millions of years. Trees grow, trees die, openings in the canopy happen, and more trees grow up. It's a self-sustaining process. You don't need humans to go in there. The plants die, and then they just keep going and going and going and going without anybody doing anything. But you can manipulate this process because different trees require different settings and nutrients and different landscapes. So the main way we manipulate regeneration is through shade tolerance. Many trees need different levels of light in order to grow. So then you have closed and open canopies. So if you can imagine this is a forest where this was completely full, but then a few trees died and it opened up. So what would grow there? Would it be more oaks, say if these were all oaks, or would it be something completely else? It's kind of a trick question because it depends. If the opening is large enough, it can be enough for oaks because they're intermediate when it comes to shade tolerance, which means there can be a little bit of shade, but they can't be almost completely blacked out. Then you have lower quality timber like maples, dogwoods, and that's it really. And they can grow in that place, which you don't really want because, once again, it's not profitable. You can't make money off of those. So you need to pay attention to shade cover, and what's going to be opening in your stand if something does die. And since it happens in waves, your stand might be able to come back no matter what, but that can take hundreds of years considering how trees grow and their life cycles. There might be a natural disaster, there might be a clear cut, and that can basically reset the stand. Now, while I'm on the topic of clear cuts, can anyone tell me which one of these photos is a clear cut? That's right, the top left. Top left is a clear cut, top right is a forest fire, bottom left is a tornado, and bottom right is a hurricane. This is the easiest way to explain a clear cut. Of course, it's the easiest way to get all timber out of a stand, but it also helps mimic a natural disaster. Natural disasters are a way to basically reset a stand, and it's good because you can basically work from a fresh slate. You can plant whatever you want. Maybe there's trees in the area that you know will automatically grow within an open area. So it's one of the most basic tools we can use as foresters to help a stand actually become more healthier. So say you want a oak stand back after a clear cut, but you know that it's going to be competing competition. What can you do? Well, as you can see here, there's grasses in the field already, which you wouldn't think would be a problem for trees, but when they're just as small as grasses and smaller, it can kill them. So you can go out there with a herbicide and kill all the plants that are competing with the oak, but make sure the herbicide isn't something that can kill the oak. So that way, your forest can come back and you can still maintain a profit off of it. Or say you have a forest where you know the tree is probably sprouting and it's going to lose other ones that grow quickly in their first years. You can leave a shelter wood, which basically means when you harvest your forest, you leave good quality trees at a set number per acre to leave basically a source of seeds to make sure that they're more abundant than everything else in the area. And this helps the present species retain its dominance in the area. The next facet of silviculture is artificial regeneration. And artificial is a topic that's not really talked about in nature. And it has nothing to do with fake trees or anything, but it's basically, instead of letting the land do what it does, you go in there and you specifically plant what species you want in a desired area at a desired trees per acre. And the problem with this, though, is that it can take a lot of money. You have to buy seeds, you have to pay people to plant it, and if they don't take, then you're out all that money. When I took my silviculture class, for extra credit, he let us go out into the field and actually plant pines. And I was just out there last 2 weeks ago, and about 5 of those pines out of the 100 we planted actually took. So you have to be very careful with how you do this, and it has to be monitored, or else you'll lose all that money. And a third way we use silviculture is, this is basically the scientific representation of silviculture. It's everything we know about it in one spot. Tree plantation. They're basically spots where optimum growth is made so that the trees can grow as fast as possible, so the turnover ratio is really high. So how do we do that? The main thing we use is planting, which we just talked about, the artificial, site prep, fertilization, competition control, and tree improvement. So this is a graph showing tree plantations and how much they were yielding over about 5 decades. And you can see as practices increased and we got better at it, you have higher yields for trees and tree plantations. And this is showing the different yields based on which techniques you use. And as you can see, they're basically compounding on themselves to create larger trees in a given area. You don't use them all usually because it's extremely expensive, so you might cherry pick some in order to fit which stand you have. So the first one's planting. It's basically the same as the artificial regeneration, but it's done in a more high quality environment and it's usually much more specific and more heavily monitored. Then you have site prep, which is basically tilling, getting rid of smaller plants in the area. You can even set a fire through the area to get rid of everything that you don't want. This, it's much quicker, and fire isn't bad. We use it all the time to clear understories out. So it's a fast way, inexpensive way to clear out a land for regeneration. Then you have fertilization. This is a graph showing the different growths for fertilized versus unfertilized. A lot of people have asked me before that since we have a higher CO2 concentration in the atmosphere today than in human history, basically, our trees are growing faster. And that's not true because the limiting factor is never CO2. The limiting factor is always nutrients, water availability, phosphorus and nitrogen, and that's what fertilizer fixes. It basically gives an abundance of those, so it never has to worry about nutrients. And this is competition control, and on the left you can see a plant that was just planted and left to do what it needs to, and on the right it was planted and then it was taken care of, as in all the plants that were around it were taken out so it didn't have to compete with anything, all the nutrients it could take in. And as you can see, it's grown bigger, it has more foliage, which in turn makes it grow faster. Then you have controlled pollination. This is very, very expensive, as you can basically see, is they go onto each and every branch where there's a male part of the tree, and they basically put a bag around it, and they collect all the pollen. And basically this allows them to control which plant is pollinated by which other plant, so they can basically create the best of the best trees. As you can see, first generation and then second generation show a moderate growth, but the control pollinated after one generation shows a higher growth than after the second. So it's basically a way to speed up natural selection. Then you have thinnings. Thinnings are a form of competition control. When a stand gets older, there will be more things in the understory that the herbicide haven't killed, or it's been too long, so the herbicide's no longer effective. And these will compete with the plant growing there. So what you can go in and take down all the undesirable ones, and also take down the trees that aren't growing properly, that are crooked, aren't growing fast enough, and they just won't return the value. And these are the effects of the treatments. This is a 17-year-old stand versus a 23-year-old stand. The one on the left has a single bedding and one fertilization. The one on the right has a double bedding, competition control, and 3 fertilizations. And even though it's 6 years younger, it has 50% more growth. These are both 13-age stands. One was left unchecked, and the other one had annual fertilization and competition control, and it had a 2.5 times the growth rate of the other one. And the third one shows just plain old fertilization, and this was no fertilization and 50 kilograms per hectare for phosphorus. You can see versus the man on the photos that it's in major increase in growth. So I think this is one of the easiest representations of plant plantations. The one on the left is a older 2x4 that you'd probably find in like the 1950s or something like that. And for it to reach that size, the tree had to be 46 years old. And the one on the right is only 10 years old. So that gives you, it's almost 5 times as fast. For references. Does anyone have any questions?